Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Crackling Lance is a new skill that is being added in 3.12 for the Heist League, and whilst I'm not intending to league start with it myself, I thought I'd put together a guide as to how I might go about building it. I will say that there is no proven best build for this skill yet. There are several different things that people have come up with, and if you're interested, you can have a look for Twitch streamer Zizaran has put out a guide to running an Archmage Hierophant with Crackling Lance. So that will be using Archmage support, a massive mana pool, using Archmage to burn lots and lots of mana with every cast of Crackling Lance, and scaling lightning damage that way. That has some potential. It's not the way that I've chosen to build it, but I'm not going to suggest that one of them is better than the other. You should have a look at Zizaran's build and make up your own mind. Likewise, I've seen a couple of other ideas around. I've seen an Inquisitor flying around, which I'll try to find and link in the description below as well. So there's plenty of ways that you can build it. Now for me, when I see this skill, the first things that I think of are 6% critical strike chance. And we are still in a meta where critical strikes are very, very, very good. Don't let the nerfs that the Assassin has taken in 3.12 fool you. The Assassin is still in a very strong place. And so my immediate thoughts go to, why don't we try and scale this as an Assassin? So we're going to be a self-cast Assassin build that primarily is focused on scaling critical strikes, using the Assassin's natural affinity for power charges. So in terms of other things you might want to be aware of, the Crackling Lance gem is going to have an alternate quality. This is a chase item. I don't know how rare this is going to be, but it's going to be possible to find a version of Crackling Lance that, when it's at 20 quality, will offer 10% increased cast speed. I think that this is considerably better than 10% chance to shock enemies, given that you have 100% chance to shock enemies on critical hits anyway, and you're going to be critically hitting often. So for that reason, this alternate quality 3 is really, really, really looking good. And this is something you're going to want to chase down at some point. But I don't know how difficult that's going to be. So that's all from the gems information. At this point, what I want to do is transfer over into the program Path of Building and outline the way that I've thought about building this character. I will just put a disclaimer that this is untested, and additionally, Path of Building does not yet support the skill Crackling Lance, and so I've had to model it based upon using Arc as a model. Arc is probably the most similar skill at the moment mechanically. However, there is a key difference. Arc does not have the area of effect tag, which means that the Intensify support doesn't work on it. On the flip side, Crackling Lance has Intensify built in and also can be used with the Intensify support. And that's the way that we're going to go. And that means that the numbers on this will not be representative of how the actual performance is in-game. So, in terms of our general purposes of the build, firstly, we're going to be an Assassin. We're going to pick up the incredibly strong power charge nodes. So there's Unstable Infusion, which is your power charge generator and gives you +1 max power charges. And then we have Deadly Infusion, which is just the thing that makes your power charges into damage dealing machines. At this point, if you're running around with 7 power charges, then Deadly Infusion is giving you 35% crit multi, which is huge. It's giving you 1.5% base critical strike chance. So that essentially multiplies your chance to critically hit by 1.25. That's really good. It's 6% base on the skill. We're raising that to 7.5%. Then we have 10% movement speed when at maximum power charges. And I think movement speed is an incredibly powerful ability in this game. Mistwalker is a strong mod defensively and also grants cast speed. Basically all sorts of things we want. This is really good. And also it provides a considerable amount of mitigation of critical strikes. You won't always be elusive, but you often will be. And that means that you will often have complete protection from extra damage from crits. This is a really powerful defensive mod. Lastly, we've got Opportunistic. This is strong. Basically, 25% more damage when when you're fighting one rare or unique enemy. That's really good. Additionally, 10% reduced damage taken when there's multiple big enemies around you. So this is always doing something useful for you. Did I mention 20% increased movement speed when you've killed recently? That lets you zip through maps faster. Essentially, opportunistic is too good not to take, even though you would also like ambush and assassinate. I personally consider that opportunistic and Mistwalker are too good to consider anything else. So that's our Ascendancy setup. Rush the power charges. So grab Unstable Infusion in the normal Labyrinth, Deadly Infusion in the Cruel Labyrinth, and then it's up to you, Opportunistic or Mistwalker. Take whichever one you want in the Merciless Labyrinth and pick up the last one when you get around to the Eternal Labyrinth. In terms of the overall texture of the passive tree, so firstly, there's a number of really good nodes in the Shadow area. We're going to just basically pick up all the ones that work for us. So that's going to be Elemental Damage, Life nodes, and also Coordination's just got cast speed, Dexterity, and Intelligence. You need to get your stats somewhere, and taking them with 8% cast speed is something that I can live with. Critical Strike nodes that are really good. Then we're going to come out to the north, pick up the Power Charge here, pick up a 2-point Dual Socket and Resourcefulness, which is just a high quality node. Then at that point we're going to go grab some life. We need life. Then come down here and grab Phase Acrobatics. This is a powerful defensive layer. It will scuff any incidental sources of energy shield that you pick up, which is unfortunate, but 30% dodge and then 30% spell dodge, and then also another 10% dodge, so a total of 40% attack dodge, 30% spell dodge. This is an incredibly powerful defense, and it's well worth scuffing up your energy shield there and also scuffing up any incidental block you might happen to get. So that's the lower end of the trait. Now let's talk about, as we traverse over to the Witch, the decisions that we've made. Life. You always need life. Next up, we're going to pick up Spell Crit, because Spell Crit is really good. Then we're going to pick up the Throatseeker cluster, which again is just high quality nodes. Something like 54% crit multi there. It is 54% for 4 points. You can't pass that up. I'm going to pick up this basic Dual Socket here. This does one really important thing, and that is that it is a great place to place a Timeless Duel later in the league when you source one of those. It gives you a lot of flexibility, because if the effects on nearby nodes are mostly negative, then you're not intersecting any really critical parts of your passive tree. If they are positive though, you could then instead use this node, or this duel, or this duel. You've also got easy access to Pain Attunement, which is a node that you don't want, but will be converted by a Timeless Duel. And once you get to the point that you're considering Timeless Duels, you'll be able to do additional research on which ones you want to use. Next up, you'll be coming through the Witch starting area, grabbing this bonkers spell crit cluster here, grabbing this power charge and this spell damage reward node. This is better than it looks. It gives you something like 28% increased spell damage, and this can scale higher if you get your hands on really good items. There's another duel. And then we'll go through Cruel Preparation and then up to Disciple of the Forbidden, which it's not so much Disciple of the Forbidden. Disciple of the Forbidden is good in its own right, but the powerhouse node is this one. Critical Strike multiplier per power charge. 35% at 7 power charges, Critical Strike multiplier. I mentioned before that I was impressed with spending 4 passive points in the Throatseeker cluster in order to pick up 54 points of crit multi. Well, here's one that we're getting that we want to path through anyway, and it's 35 points. That's just an incredible node. Lastly, we're going to exit via the northwest of the tree, just down to pick up some of the high quality stuff near the Templar starting area. So we're picking up the Life cluster here, which is good life nodes, picking up Light of Divinity and Holy Dominion just because they're generally good. We've got a power charge here, and then we've got the Dual Socket and the life cluster, the life nodes down here, another life cluster here, and another spell crit here. Additionally, we've got Arcane Capacitor, which is one of those nodes that's quite strong because it will incidentally proc Arcane Surge for you, which will help a lot with solving mana issues while you're running around. Ideally, this is the sort of thing that in conjunction with also having the Flame Dash movement skill may mean that you can get rid of a mana flask at last. That's the goal. That said, I have not played Crackling Lance, as no one has, and it may be that the mana issues are worse than this. Now you'll notice that we don't path out into any of the cluster jewels here. The reason for that is that I'm working under the assumption that you're not going to have access to very, very good cluster jewels early on in the league. As good cluster jewels come onto the market, what you're going to want to do is find the weakest areas of the passive tree and trim them. For instance, I think that it's quite reasonable later in the league to cut off everything south of here. There's some good nodes down here. There's an extra power charge. There's lots of other good stuff. But by trimming it here, you can then invest all those points into a cluster jewel out here that could conceivably do more for you. But it's not going to do more for you until you've got your hands on some high quality cluster jewels, which flat out don't exist at the start of the league. Lastly, we're going to talk about some item ideas. And now, I have got... Oh, sorry, no, we'll get support gems as well, but let's start with items. I've just created some very basic items in the in Path of Building. You'll notice the only flask that's turned on is the only one that I feel is easy to get your hands on, and that's Atziri's Promise. This drops with a 50% drop rate from Atziri, Queen of the Vaal, in the Apex of Sacrifice. She's the first boss that you get access to beyond the campaign. She's probably about as hard as Izaro in the Eternal Labyrinth, but you know, obviously people will have different experiences with it. But she's not trivial. She can be mechanically challenging, but she's something that it doesn't really hurt much to fail in softcore anyway. So by all means, just keep trying with Atziri, because you'll get her down eventually. And when you do, her flask is incredible. I've then included a wish list of 3 flasks, and these are all turned off for a reason. They're all hard to get your hands on. There is Bottled Faith, which drops in the special endgame map for Cortex. Very hard map to beat, and it's also a very rare map as well. There is the Vessel of Vinctar, which drops in the Vinctar Square unique map. Again, this is not a hard map to beat, but it's a hard map to get your hands on. And then there's the Cinder Swallow Urn, which drops from the Syndicate Mastermind, and is again a mongrel of an item to get your hands on. These are all turned off, but they're just posted there so that you know some of the sorts of items that are worth looking for. In terms of other items, I've put in Life and Resist Opal Rings. These are something you won't be able to wear them until level 80. They'll be really good when you can put them on. Until that point, just use even more life on your items. So use Coral Rings or use Resist Bases, whatever is necessary. Amulet-wise, I've put in a Crusader item that has +1 to the level of all lightning skill gems. Now, you're not going to be able to pick this up until you start really grinding away at tier 13, 14, 15, and 16 maps quite a bit. At that point, you'll eventually have a high enough item level Crusader-influenced amulet drop that you can try and craft something like this. The key thing here is a +1 to the level of all lightning skill gems. That's a Crusader item only roll. It's very good if you can get your hands on it, but it's also not the end of the world if you can't. You know, if I was to remove this item, you'll see that the damage drops, but it's not an overwhelming drop. We've got a Tabula Rasa here. Tabula Rasa is just the 6 link to use when you can't afford a real 6 link. It does the job, and it's something that you can conceivably farm yourself once you get access to the channel map, which is a tier 4 map, or alternately you can do it in the Blood Aqueduct in Act 9. I don't like repeating the zones in the core storyline very much, but there are certainly people that have success doing that. It's up to you which one you want to do. I've left other inventory slots blank at the moment, but basically you're just looking for life and resist in those slots to start with, and then after a while you can work on getting more genuine endgame gear. But that's the sort of thing that you'll have to figure out for yourself. In terms of skills, firstly, let's talk about utility. Flame Dash linked to Second Wind and Arcane Surge is my preference for movement skills. Your preference may be different. You don't have to follow me. By all means, if you would prefer to use Lightning Warp, then use Lightning Warp. If you would prefer to use Shield Charge, then go ahead and use Shield Charge. I would think you're wrong on that front, but by all means, do whatever you want. Herald of Thunder, we're going to use as an extra source of damage. You'll see that just using it, just having it equipped gives us some extra lightning damage, which is useful and also helps us clear up some stragglers. And the other thing that I really like about it is that it destroys pots and things like that for you as well. Sometimes they will drop loot. We got Wrath as well. Wrath is a support gem that amplifies your lightning damage from spells. It's really, really good, and it's something that you want to get your hands on when you can. Wrath will reserve 50% of your mana. Herald of Thunder will reserve 25%. Hopefully 25% unreserved mana is enough for this build to feel smooth. If it's not, then remove one of the two auras or run a mana flask and consider running Clarity. Lastly, I've used Arc as a way to make this sort of come together because Path of Building does not yet support Crackling Lance. However, that means that it's not counting Intensify in any of its damage calculations. So replace Arc, of course, with Crackling Lance, and Intensify will then come online. I'll be using Controlled Destruction as a support gem to sacrifice a little bit of critical strike chance in order to do a lot more damage. The key thing with Controlled Destruction is that it sounds like it's a gem for non-crit builds, but it's actually a gem for crit builds at heart. You're sacrificing some of your chance to get a critical strike, but you've got so much of that that's not overwhelming, and in exchange you're getting 44% more spell damage, including on your critical strikes. Yeah, so this gem's just really good. Added lightning damage, or if you can get your hands on it, the Awaken version seems to be the next best gem, and so I'm going to recommend that, but by all means test other support gems as well. Inspiration both reduces the mana cost and indirectly reduces it, and also gives you a whole lot of other benefits. It tends to be one of the better support gems for pure elemental damage skills, and we have Lightning Penetration as the last skill gem. Lightning Penetration underperforms on the damage numbers here, but it does a lot better against tough bosses, and so it's something really worth getting your hands on. Additionally, all of these almost all of these support gems have Awakened upgrades. Those are in-game goals that you want to try and get your hands on, but that you won't be able to get immediately. And anyways, that's really all there is to it. I will upload this draft Path of Building, and I would encourage you as well, if you do decide to play this build, to give me some advice on what worked and what didn't, because this is a draft. This is based upon my thoughts on seeing the skill. No plan survives first contact with the enemy, so I'm keen to see what sort of other ways you find to scale the damage and what challenges you face, how it performs against endgame. I feel that it's got enough damage to comfortably do general purpose mapping and to be able to beat bosses but not trivialize them. But that is based upon just looking at the numbers in Path of Building. That can sometimes be misleading and it can feel a bit different in the real world. So fire away with your comments and questions. I'm going to be starting a Glacial Cascade Miner, and the details of that build should show up on the bottom left of your screen now. And in the top left, I've got some discussion on some tips and tricks for making currency on day one of a new league. So have a look at those if you're interested. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. I hope you have a good one.